Good morning and welcome to Eggs and Issues. My name is Della Schmidt and I'm President and CEO of the Greater Burlington Partnership. I will serve as the moderator this morning. I want to thank the Partnership's Government Relations Committee for hosting this event. Recently, President Biden approved $1.9 trillion for the American Rescue Plan as part of COVID recovery. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from our local school, city, and county representatives to hear their proposed plans for how each entity will utilize the American Rescue Plan funds. We will be using the chat feature for handling questions, so at any time during this program, you can certainly text in via the chat any questions you have for all or specific people on the panel. Today, we welcome Lisa Beams, Superintendent of the West Burlington Independent School District, Greg Reynolds, Director of Business and Services, and Corey Johnson, Director of Curriculum for the Burlington Community School District, Dan Gifford, City Manager, City of West Burlington, Chad Bird, City Manager, City of Burlington, and Tom Broker, Des Moines County Supervisor. Lisa Beams, we will begin with you.
Thank you, Della, and thank you for hosting this event. Over the course of the COVID-19, we've had 3 rounds of funding, with Sr3 being the last one. West Burlington schools had received approximately $1.5 million combined in all of those 3 federal funding cycles. Specifically with Sr3, a significant amount of that money will be going to improving the air quality within our buildings. So in Sr3 specifically, we received about $1.01 million. About $800,000 of that will be going to improve air quality. We have to set aside 20%. So the other $200,000 will be used to close the learning gaps we have for students. And components of that will include summer school, where we're paying an incentive rate for teachers to work with that, and we're having more students involved. Evening school at the secondary level. We'll be maintaining a first grade section. So the intent would have been, as they moved to second grade, they would have been reduced to 3 sections instead of 4. We have concerns about our first grade, and we'll be maintaining that teacher at least for next year, if not into the following year. We're also looking to partner with Burlington in a virtual learning program that they're developing that I hope Corey's going to speak to, in order to provide that opportunity for those families that want to continue in a virtual setting. And those are what we have pieced together. We're still looking at needs related to mental health as well. We will also, the funding covering leave if you were COVID positive or had to quarantine related to a family, ended December 31st. We'll use a small pool of money to make sure that we've covered that for all of our staff throughout the entire year. And we will also maintain a nursing assistant for at least this year in order to assist the nurse not knowing what next year looks like for us. And that covers our $1 million roughly.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll circle back when we handle the questions. At this time, we'll move on to Greg and Corey from the Burlington Community School District.
Yes, good morning. As Lisa referenced, schools receive the ESSER funds, which is the elementary and secondary emergency school relief funds. There have been 3 rounds of funding. The first round, ESSER 1, was last spring, and the district was allocated $1,169,000, of which $1,068,000 was for the public schools, and then the non-public, Notre Dame, also received $100,000 in funding. The ESSER 2 funds, which was issued last fall, we received $4,732,000, and then they released ESSER 3 just earlier this week, the allocations for schools, of which the the Burlington schools is going to receive $10,628,000. So a total between the three funds of about $16,429,000. Of course, the two main focus and purposes of these funds we're looking at is, how do we continue and provide instructional supports for students, especially when schools were closed last spring. The first and foremost was how do we continue to provide education for students? And then the second main function is, providing safe environments for schools. So a lot of funds were spent on PPE. We spent a lot of funds purchasing cleaning machines and sprayers that we can use without the buildings, and school buses and those types of things, and cleaning supplies for students. So we really want to thank the community through this process too. They've been tremendous resources for us. We had a number of us reach out to the schools and say, how can we help? So a lot of technology supplies were purchased, providing online instruction for students with Chromebooks. We've partnered with some of the community businesses in expanding Wi-Fi for students and making sure students can have internet access while they're been working from home. So we also really need to thank the staff also through this process. They've worked very hard. A number of them reached out to us and just said, hey, let us know what we can help. Anything you need, anything that can be done, we just want to help. So that's the biggest thing is we're continuing to use these funds for developing instructional programs and staff. We have until September of 2023 to spend these funds. So Mr. Johnson will talk about some of the instructional supports and programs that we're doing for students. And also with this third round of SR3, one of the things we're looking at is improving air quality in the building. So we're going to be evaluating and possibly using those funds for those purposes. So I'll let Mr. Johnson talk about the instructional supports and programs that we're using these funds for.
All right, good morning. And again, thank you to the Greater Burlington Partnership for allowing us to talk through our programs and our opportunities here. Mr. Reynolds talked a lot about the operational costs that we were able to recoup as part of receiving these funds. And then, we've also had a lot of educational programs, and we really want to focus our use of funds to the greatest extent possible on programs for students. We want to funnel the funds so that we can maintain and expand opportunities for students in the Burlington Community School District. So far this school year, one of our actions that we took that used some of our SR1 and SR2 funds was continuous learning classrooms and use of the James Madison Education Center for students on their continuous learning day. So when we were in the hybrid model for a majority of the school year, we had about 60% of our K-6 students who were taking advantage of those continuous learning opportunities, which meant even though they may only have been with their teacher 2 days a week, we had spaces with school staff, supported, structured, access to internet, access to some additional supports for students every day of the week. So we paid for those additional staff and those additional programs and those additional costs. Mr. Reynolds also mentioned internet access. We continue to have a partnership with Mediacom where the district through Mediacom can pay for internet access for students who qualify. So and that's still an opportunity that's available. So students who are still struggling with internet access even now could register and sign up and take advantage of that program. As we look forward, we are trying, we're considering again, how do we best funnel funds towards supports for students based on the data that we see this school year. Like Mrs. Beam said, we also see a large impact on our early elementary grades, especially those kindergartners and first graders from last year who didn't have the third trimester of their year. And those are critical points for reading and math development. We are looking and working to expand our summer school options this summer and next summer. As a school district, we always invest heavily in summer school programs for grades pre-K through 12 and have some very innovative programs in place that we could go into more detail on in a later event. But we really want to expand the number of seats that are available. We're expanding the number of teaching staff that we have, and in some cases, the number of weeks or number of sessions that we offer to make sure that we can get kids into summer school and more kids into summer school grades pre-K through 12. We are adding additional staff for next school year. We have added at least one additional interventionist or at-risk teacher to every building. So at the elementary levels, those are called interventionists. At the secondary levels, they're called at-risk teachers. We'll be adding at least one additional to every building, in some cases more. At the secondary level, so the middle school and the high school, some of those at-risk teachers will be working on an alternate schedule. So they'll work into the evening to provide after-school supports for students and continue to be able to provide that really extending the school day for students who are in need of that extended school day option. We have added some additional support individuals to really help structure those interventions. And we are, Mrs. Beams also mentioned, we are working jointly with some other local school districts and hope to have a formal announcement next week on what that looks like and who all is involved. But as Mrs. Beams said, West Burlington is one of the districts involved in this and really offering a permanent virtual school option for families. So part of our funding, our funds go towards developing that. We have recently appointed a principal for that program who is working full-time to develop that. So we will have that option and be working with our neighboring districts and districts in the region to provide that long-term as well. So if you're interested in that, be watching for an announcement I anticipate next week. Mr. Reynolds also talked about, again, improving our technology infrastructure, improving access to Chromebooks. Previous to the pandemic, we were 1-to-1 Chromebooks for grades 7 through 12. We're now 1-to-1 Chromebooks for grades K through 12. And we continue to look forward now. We have our ESSER3 allotments on what's the best way to use those ESSER3 funds. We are looking to maintain smaller than normal class sizes at especially the early elementary levels. I anticipate that at the early elementaries, we'll have class sizes of fewer than 20, probably somewhere in the 16 to 18 range. And we're also looking at our mental health and healthcare supports. We've always invested heavily as a district in mental health and healthcare, and looking for how we can continue to support and invest in those areas. And the final area is the family engagement, and I'll say family engagement. One of the major impacts we've had through COVID is student attendance, and that's not uncommon for districts that I've talked to. A large portion of that student attendance actually was due to the pandemic itself. Through February, we had calculated that we had nearly 6,000 missed student days due to the pandemic. So kids who were either positive for COVID or in quarantine or in isolation. So we want to make sure that we work diligently to improve attendance, moving forward to make sure that we're actively engaging families and students and making sure that we've got them engaged in our school community. So those are some of the highlights. Again, we are still continuing to evaluate and determine kind of the best next steps. So we've kind of got, like we've kind of talked through work we've already done, work that's planned for next year and already in the works, and then continuing to evaluate on what those additional steps need to be.
Okay, thank you, Greg and Corey. I also want to just take a moment to thank Lisa Beams. I understand she had to slip away for another commitment, so we appreciate that she was able to join us for a few minutes this morning. We will not be able to send any questions her way, however. So at this time, we're going to move over into our cities and counties conversation. We'll begin with Dan Gifford, the city manager from the city of West Burlington. Dan?
Hi, everybody. I was told there'd be eggs. I don't. Anyway, we're slated to get about $400,000 in 2 payments. And one of the things that they authorize is for water and sewer infrastructure. I've been inquiring about, because more people work in West Burlington and live in West Burlington. Our water and sewer sales for the last year, when everything shut down, just tanked. It was we lost a lot of revenue there. Whether we could just replace that revenue, and it looks like that we probably could, but I'm not sure if that's the best way to handle it since we have two big projects going on that affect our water and sewer rates. We've got a new lift station going in down by Sunnybrook, and we're building a new water tower out on Mount Pleasant Street. So both of those have caused water and sewer rate increases, and I would like to mitigate that some because I would like to reduce the impact on our customers and our citizens on water and sewer rates. So I'm not sure if putting the money into our account directly as revenue or reducing the amount we borrow from the Iowa Finance Authority for those two projects is the best way to go with that. Finance is kind of working through the numbers, and those are just my ideas. I have 5 people that aren't me that may actually make that decision. So, we'll see what happens, but that's kind of where we're leaning right now. It's going into our water and sewer in some manner or fashion.
Okay, thank you very much, Dad. And we are delighted to have with us Chad Bird, the new city manager for the city of Burlington. And Chad, you've been with us in Burlington for what, about 15, 16 days now?
Yeah, just 2 weeks, actually.
Just 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
right.
Welcome to Eggs and Issues. We'll try
Thank
to
you.
keep it easy on you this first go around.
All right. Well, yeah, we're jumping right into it with this topic. So, I've not had the opportunity to formally discuss how to use this funding with our city council or staff, but we've had some informal conversations, and I'm just starting to kind of read through and understand what some of our requirements are. And as Dan said, there are a few things for cities and counties that we can use this funding for. We can use it to backfill lost revenues using fiscal 19 or the first full fiscal year pre-pandemic as our basis. And so that would be a strong recommendation that I would have to the city council, that we look at any of our revenue funds that lost revenue during the pandemic as the first place to start looking at some of these funds. For example, hotel motel we know is down a fair amount, a couple $100,000 for the city of Burlington. So there's a lot of folks that depend on hotel motel funding for a lot of different things. And, I think it would be important to try to shore that up. There may be some other revenue funds that we can do that same scenario with. The other, I think, is probably more important, and that are water, sewer, and broadband projects. It's interesting to note that so far in the guidance that's come from the Treasury Department is that infrastructure projects are limited to water and sewer and broadband. When I think of street projects or bridges or other surface transportation type projects that we certainly have need for as well, that we are limited to water and sewer. So Burlington doesn't have a shortage of sewer projects with our sewer separation project and consent order from the EPA. So I know that'll be one of the big pushes that we'll look at, expanding some of our current projects or trying to pick up some additional projects that we haven't been able to identify funding for at this time. As others have said, we'll receive the disbursement in 2 allotments. One should be coming here before the end of June, and then the other about a year later. And for the city of Burlington, that's about $3.4 million. So I hope to get in front of the city council here shortly in the next few weeks to formally start talking about some priorities and some needs. But right now, shoring up our reserve accounts and looking at sewer projects are probably the #1 issues that I would recommend.
Okay, thank you for that, Chad. And we're going to wrap up this first round with the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors, represented by Tom Broker.
Good morning. Let me start by emphasizing that these are only preliminary thoughts prior to an official notice of award and prior to any official Treasury guidance and definitions. The American Recovery Plan is sending about $65 billion directly to U.S. counties, and $612 million of that is going to Iowa counties. We expect Des Moines County to receive about $7.5 million. We should receive half of that amount in the next few weeks and the balance 12 to 18 months later. The deadline to spend the funds is December 31st, 2024. Unfortunately, we do not expect expect specific clarification regarding the allowable uses of the funds until after the arrival of those funds. We do know that if the funds are used in an unauthorized manner, the unauthorized expenditures must be returned to the Treasury. We have no idea yet regarding the procedure or the time required to get approval for expenditure proposals. There are also extensive reporting, accounting, and transparency requirements. We do not know yet if we can use the funds to recover the additional costs of auditing and accounting. But Rachel wants me to discuss some thoughts about how Des Moines County means to use those funds, so here we go. My personal view is that one-time revenues are to be used exclusively for one-time expenses, capital expenses. We're already pretty sure that the money can be used to replace revenue shortfalls that were caused by the pandemic. I'm positive that possibility will get an early look, although this probably won't end up being a large amount of money. One of the eligible uses of the funds is to respond to or to mitigate the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. This is probably the most flexible opportunity for the use of those funds. We think we might be able to fit one of the county's most sorely needed facilities into that category. Des Moines County needs a new public health facility. The existing public health building is almost 90 years old. It's too small, it's poorly laid out, and it's located on a steep hill that makes access to foot traffic or even parking hazardous for the elderly and those with disabilities. There's no room for social distancing or vaccination clinics, and no parking lot for drive-through clinics. The county has been talking about and looking for a replacement facility or even some type of remodeling for years. This may be an opportunity to make a long-term investment in a modern facility that would last Des Moines County for decades. We're not sure that the legislation addresses mental health in the county allocations, but we will certainly be looking at any opportunity to expand our mental health and disability service capabilities, and not only locally, but regionally as well. There was mention of pooling county funds through our 8-county mental health region to expand mental health services region-wide at the Regional Governance Board meeting last Wednesday. We've also heard that there may be opportunities for tourism, so perhaps Des Moines County Conservation might find its way into the discussion. And I'm confident that our elected officials, department heads, and the community at large will have quite a few ideas when they find out how much money is heading this direction. So finally, let me close by restating that this is still all conjecture and subject to change. Thank you.
Well, I want to remind folks listening in via Zoom that the chat feature is to be used for submitting questions. I do have a question for our cities and counties as a starting out point, and that is, again, we know that the rules of how the funds can be used have not yet been released. There is maybe a possibility for some creativity. One of the number one issues that we continue to hear about here at the Greater Burlington Partnership is about housing, affordable housing, availability of housing, being able to redevelop blighted properties and neighborhoods. Do you see any scenario in which the cities and/or county could explore the possibility of leveraging any of these dollars for incentives or redevelopment grants or forgivable loans for owner-occupied residential property if they want to do some much-needed redevelopment?
I'll tackle that. I would love to be able to leverage these funds into other grants for housing or incentive programs. Right now, I spent a fair amount of time yesterday on the Treasury website trying to look for some of that kind of guidance, and I just am not seeing it yet. So, but maybe that's an opportunity for the local partners, the county and the cities and the schools to get together and kind of push that issue a little bit. Or it's an opportunity certainly for us to be creative. If we are limited to infrastructure, how can we leverage infrastructure projects to impact housing? Might be one way to think about it creatively.
The county has already been approached by Southeast Iowa Regional Planning on that very issue. So, and like Chad said, rules aren't very clear. So, but I know they're looking into it, and they will be, I'm sure they'll be contacting the county and perhaps the cities as well.
Yeah, I have a council that'd be eager to do something with housing, but I just haven't seen it in there yet. So like you say, we'll have to wait till some more rules come out, because as of right now, I don't see where that's being able to be used for that, but I'd love it too.
Well, thank you for that. Maybe if the funds release pressure points in other parts of the budget, it'll free up some dollars or creativity. But again, it is a prime top of mind issue here at the partnership and amongst many of our stakeholders. I'm going to move to Greg and Corey, and I think, Corey, this one is going to be for you. Workforce talent development is another top of mind issue for partnership stakeholders. And we continue to hear concerns from area employers about a educational and skills gap widening even more because of what has happened with COVID and students having to do online learning and disruptions to classroom instruction. What are the plans of the Burlington School District? I would ask Lisa, but she had to go, so I can't put her on the spot. But what are the plans of the school district to try to address achievement gaps that may have actually grown as a result of the COVID-19 disruptions?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think there's really, kind of a multi-fold thing. I think there, as we think about workforce skill sets, in some ways, one of the things I've seen is that because of our early transition to virtual learning last spring, fortunately, we were in a position as a school district where we were able to provide a virtual learning option for all of our students last spring, when lots of other school districts were still trying to figure out how to make that work and what that might look like. We jumped in, and through hybrid learning this fall in winter, one of the unintended positive consequences, one of the silver linings, if you will, is that our students and our staff got very comfortable using technology. So as we all know in the workforce, and technology literacy and the ability to engage virtually like we are today is an increasing skill set. The able to use Google Docs and electronic file sharing and all those other distance media is a skill set that we've really seen develop in our students and our staff this year. So there are areas where there are some unintended silver linings where we've seen growth in skills that might not have otherwise have been there. In terms of then where we have seen some learning loss. Again, we come back to, our goals at the elementary level right now really are around small class sizes and adding intervention opportunities and the summer school opportunities, and ensuring that we have targeted supports for students who are still experiencing gaps in their learning. What we see in our data is that our gaps in our reading skills were more impacted than our gaps in math. We've seen some really strong recovery in our math scores and our math data, but our reading is an area that we know we need to focus on. And again, when you think about early literacy and kindergarten, first and second graders really learning how to read and not, and trying to do that remotely in some instances, that's an area we know we need to focus on. On the other end of the educational spectrum, our high schoolers, we've had some high schoolers who did really struggle with continuing engagement through hybrid and virtual learning. So we do have some credit deficits that we might not otherwise have seen. So again, we are doing a lot with our high school scheduling, with increasing the number of credits that are available during summer school, and making sure that we are staffing in a way that allows us to teach the courses that we need to teach, so that our high school students are able to recover the credits that they didn't earn either last spring or this school year. And that's where some of those additional at-risk positions come in. Some of the evening school opportunities that I talked about come in. We are always looking at our curriculum and evaluating our curriculum and thinking through how to best target those interventions and supports and curriculum materials based on those database needs. But those are just a couple examples of, I think, how we're really working diligently to do that. I just want to mention again, a quick quote on that too, is that, we sometimes talk about kids falling behind because of the pandemic. And I want to just, make sure that we're clear that kids and families aren't falling behind, they're surviving a pandemic. And that we see nationwide and across the world that disproportionate health, economic, and social impacts are on high minority and high poverty communities. And unfortunately, Burlington and the Burlington Community School District is a higher poverty community. So we should be expected to see that higher disproportionate impact. And then that's why we're acting in the way that we are to very purposely mitigate what we anticipate as that impact.
Thank you, Corey, and we appreciate all the work that the Burlington Community School District does on behalf of our families and communities, and as you know, stand at the ready to partner with you and help as we all recover and move forward. So my last round of questions for all of the panelists is, as this process moves forward, so we've heard, Tom, you articulated it very well. A word of caution, there's a lot we don't know about these new funds that are becoming available. We don't know what the rules are. We don't know what strings might be attached. There'll be a lot of conversations that need to happen on the city council boards, the elected folks that actually at some point will have to vote on making some decisions. How can the constituents of the Greater Burlington Partnership engage in the process? How do you see this process playing out? And if folks want to weigh in on options or considerations, what will that look like? And Tom, if we can begin with you, please.
Unlike a lot of public boards, the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors has a public comment period every meeting. And we will respond and engage in conversation with somebody. So anybody wants to come to a meeting or call, we've got a phone line, or they can email the Board of Supervisors with a question. We will respond to their questions. If they want to make a request or an idea, we will add that to the list. My phone number's on the wall at the courthouse, as are the other supervisors. We're not hard to get a hold of. My phone number is 319-759-1166. So a great deal of the population feels free to call me at any time of the day or night anyway. So that's not a problem. We are interested in hearing what the community would like. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Chad?
Yeah, I feel the same way. The public certainly is, we would welcome comments from the public. I would encourage the city's boards and commissions to discuss it at their next meetings and bring ideas forward. Reach out to city staff or our elected officials with ideas, but understanding right now there are constraints on how that money can be used, and we'll just have to work through that. Hopefully those guidelines expand a little bit, but certainly any opportunity for public discussion and discourse will help staff formulate recommendations to the council.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, we have two public comment periods in our meetings, one at the beginning and one at the end. So, but we really don't get enough public participation. So we would welcome that as well. Just call me, stop in, come to a council meeting, well, however you want to engage us. Where we get quite a few comments on Facebook when our meetings are live. Some of those are constructive and some aren't. But other than that, there's lots of ways to reach us, and we welcome any ideas you can have.
Okay, thank you. And Greg and Corey, opportunities for folks to engage in the conversation as it moves forward?
Yes, thank you again. Similar to the other boards, the Burlington School Board does have a constituent communication opportunity at each of our board meetings. So we always encourage everyone to reach out to the school district with comments during the board meetings. And as always, we are always available through email, telephones. Feel free to reach out to the administration. any of the building principals with concerns or questions. So we are always open for input.
Guests for joining us this morning for Eggs and Issues. And I want to take this opportunity to remind our chamber members that we have a couple of member-specific events coming up that I hope you'll take advantage of. There is a virtual Success in Business seminar taking place on April 22nd. The topic is strengthening commitment, diversity, and inclusion in the business community. Secondly, on Friday, April 30th, we will be celebrating small businesses. The small business celebrations theme this year is Root, Root, Root for small business, and we will be holding the event at the Burlington Bees Community Field on April 30th. We hope that you will reach out to the Greater Burlington Partnership and RSVP for both of these upcoming events. Thank you for joining the Greater Burlington Partnership and our Eggs and Issues this morning. Have a great day.